Have you ever felt like your kindness became a silent contract, one where you're expected to stay quiet, stay available, and stay small, just to make others comfortable? What if I told you that the moment you stop overgiving is the exact moment people reveal who they truly are? Because sometimes it's not your boundaries that change the relationship. It's the truth finally being exposed. Have you noticed how being nice often comes with unspoken expectations? You're seen as the understanding one, so people assume you'll always make space for their needs, no questions asked. You stay silent to keep the peace, always there when they need you, never asking for much in return. And somehow that quiet tolerance turns into a license for others to push your limits. But here's the thing. The moment you stop giving endlessly, everything changes. Suddenly, people begin to show their true nature. Imagine this. It's like feeding a stray dog every day. It never barks, never growls, just shows up, eats, and leaves. But the one day you stop feeding it, it doesn't scratch at your door or whine. It simply disappears. That silence, it's not heartbreak, it's clarity. You realize it was never loyalty, it was convenience. That's what happens when you stop being nice to the wrong people. You don't lose a real connection, you break a pattern, a performance. And when the performance ends, they don't ask if you're okay. They don't thank you. Instead, they say, "You've changed." They don't check in on your well-being, they question your distance. That's not care, it's control. Because while they adored your kindness, they never respected your limits. And now, you're standing at a crossroad. Continue pleasing people who only value your silence or choose to protect your peace. Let's talk about what really happens when you stop being overly nice, especially to people who've gotten far too comfortable benefiting from your self-neglect. They're the type who sing your praises when you're always saying yes, always there, always agreeable. But the second you say no, the warmth vanishes, the compliments fade, the real person begins to show. And here's the truth. Setting boundaries doesn't change you. It simply unmasks them. Some will guilt trip you, some will criticize, others will act like you've betrayed them for daring to prioritize yourself. But they're not upset because you're wrong. They're upset because your silence, your time, your compliance are no longer available to them on demand. And that reaction? That's the most honest thing they've ever shown you. This is where Stoic wisdom becomes your anchor. Epictetus once said, if telling the truth angers them, they never valued the truth to begin with. Translation, if someone only supports you when you're sacrificing yourself, they were never supporting you at all. They were loyal to your benefits, not your being. Let me give you a real example. There's a woman I know, we'll call her Rachel. She was always the nice one, always helping, always saying yes, even when it meant sleepless nights, empty pockets, or emotional exhaustion. One day, Rachel reached her limit. She started saying no. She stopped over-explaining. She turned down last-minute favors politely but firmly. And what happened? Some people respected her more, but others got cold. One friend told her, "You've changed," as if self-respect were betrayal. Another stopped speaking to her entirely. At first, Rachel felt guilt gnawing at her, but eventually she saw it clearly. Those weren't friends. They were users, attached not to her, but to the version of her that never said no. So how do you handle it when people reveal their true colors after you stop overgiving? First, don't ignore it. Their reaction is the clearest window into their real intentions. Second, stand firm. Just because they're uncomfortable doesn't mean you're wrong. Growth is not betrayal. And finally, be grateful. Because when people show you who they really are, it's not a loss, it's freedom. Previously, we explored how setting boundaries unmasks people who only valued your silence, not your soul. But there's another layer, one that hits even deeper. The moment you stop being overly nice, they lose something they were never supposed to have: power over you. Because here's the reality: being kind should never mean becoming a doormat. When you draw a line, the wrong people see it as rebellion, but the right ones, they see it for what it truly is: self-respect. When you stop being nice to those who used your generosity as leverage, you don't lose a relationship, you lose the illusion that it was ever mutual. And that illusion, that's what's been weighing you down. Letting go of it is the beginning of real peace. Now let's dive into the second shift. They lose power over you. Think about it. What really happens when you stop over-accommodating? People who secretly benefit from your people-pleasing nature? When you're constantly agreeable, always saying yes and putting others before yourself, you hand over something more valuable than time or energy. You hand over control. You let their moods dictate your reactions. Their expectations begin to shape your priorities. And worst of all, their opinions start to define your self-worth. But the moment you stop playing that role, when you stop cushioning their ego, stop chasing their validation, something incredible happens. They lose their grip. Because the truth is, your niceness wasn't just kindness. It was silent permission. You let them fill space in your life unchecked. You allowed your energy to be drained without challenge. And your silence? They used it to their advantage, mistaking it for consent. But the day you stop explaining yourself, stop apologizing for your boundaries, and stop asking for approval, that's the day you reclaim your emotional independence. And to people who feed off control, that's not just inconvenient, it's terrifying. This is where Stoic wisdom becomes your armor. Marcus Aurelius once said, "You become powerful the moment you no longer seek approval." Why is that so powerful? Because when you stop basing your self-worth on others' acceptance, you no longer need their permission to feel good about your decisions. You turn inward. You're guided by your principles, not their preferences. That's how you unlock something priceless: freedom. The kind of freedom that no manipulator, no passive-aggressive comment, no silent treatment can take away. Let me share a story with you. His name is Jason. For years, Jason was known as the nice guy, the dependable one, always ready to help, always putting everyone else first, even if it meant working late for ungrateful coworkers or canceling his own plans to satisfy demanding family members. Why did he do it? Because he feared upsetting anyone. He thought keeping the peace meant keeping people happy. But eventually Jason had a revelation. What he called peace wasn't peace at all. It was submission. And worse, people had started to expect it from him, as if his sacrifice was just part of the deal. One day he decided he'd had enough. Jason began saying no, firmly, respectfully, without guilt or long explanations. And what do you think happened? The backlash came fast. A colleague snapped, "Wow, you've really changed." A family member said, "You're not as generous as you used to be." layering guilt into every word. But Jason stood his ground, and as time passed, he noticed something he hadn't felt in years. Lightness. The weight lifted. The pressure disappeared, and then it hit him. Those people had never actually been in control. He had simply been giving his power away. And now he was finally taking it back. So how do you respond when they start losing that control? Here's the answer. You don't owe them an explanation. Own your strength. Stop overthinking their discomfort. Let them sit with it. It's not your responsibility to cushion the impact of your growth. You're not doing something to them. You're doing something for yourself. At the end of the day, when you stop being overly nice to the wrong people, they lose access to the version of you that kept them comfortable. And you finally meet the version of yourself who doesn't need to shrink to fit anyone else's expectations. Last time, we talked about reclaiming your power by refusing to be controlled through guilt or approval seeking. But what happens next might surprise you. You begin to hear yourself again, because once the noise of people-pleasing fades, what returns is something invaluable: mental clarity. This is one of the most underrated gifts you receive when you stop being overly nice to the wrong people. And yet, it's rarely talked about. When you're stuck in the habit of pleasing those who constantly take more than they give, your mind becomes cluttered. You live in a loop of second-guessing. Did I say too much? Should I have just agreed? Will they be mad if I don't respond right away? That constant buzzing in your head, it's mental fog. And the scary part is, you often don't realize how heavy it's become until you finally put it down. Here's the truth. Pleasing the wrong people distorts your inner compass. You become so wrapped up in meeting their expectations, in preserving their comfort, that you stop listening to your own intuition. You start to mistrust your gut, brushing aside your instincts to avoid disappointing others. Over time, your sense of direction blurs. You lose touch with what you want, what you need, because you're too busy managing how others feel about you. But the moment you step back, when you stop overgiving, overthinking, and over-apologizing, something powerful happens. The mental fog lifts, and for the first time in a long time, you can think clearly again. This is where Stoic wisdom becomes a compass. Seneca once said, "Remove unnecessary things from your mind, and peace will return." It's such a simple idea, but profoundly true. When you let go of the pressure to constantly please, especially those who have never truly earned that effort, you make space. Space to think, space to breathe, space to refocus on what actually matters. Because here's the secret. Mental clarity doesn't come from being everything to everyone. It comes from living in alignment with your values, from protecting your peace, from refusing to let others crowd your mind with their endless demands. Let me tell you about someone I know. Her name is Emily. Emily was everyone's go-to. Always available, always helpful. Whether it was a last-minute favor, a late-night call, or emotional support at 2 a.m., Emily was the one they called. She was dependable, yes, but behind that dependability was something else: exhaustion. Over time, Emily realized something was wrong. She wasn't okay. She was burned out. Her thoughts were scattered. Her anxiety ran high. She would lie, awake at night, replaying conversations over and over, wondering if she'd offended someone just by being honest. Her mind was never quiet. Then something changed. Emily didn't suddenly become cold. she became clear. She began setting boundaries, stopped over-explaining herself, and gave herself permission not to answer every single message or call. She no longer felt guilty for putting herself first, and within just a few weeks, Emily felt like a new person. Her thoughts slowed down. Her focus returned. And for the first time in years, she experienced something she had nearly forgotten: peace of mind. So, how do you protect your mental clarity? Start here. Step back from those who constantly drain it. You don't owe unlimited access to people who misuse your energy. Then, practice the art of silence. Not every opinion deserves a response. Not every expectation deserves your attention. Now that your mind is finally yours again, what do you do with that space? That's where the next insight comes in. It's about what you gain emotionally when you stop letting the wrong people write your story. Now that you've reclaimed your mental clarity, something else begins to shift beneath the surface. You start seeing yourself differently. Because when the noise fades and the guilt dissolves, what rises in its place is something far more powerful than just peace. Self-respect. This isn't just about setting boundaries or cutting out toxic people. This is about something deeper. It's about finally choosing yourself, perhaps for the first time in a long time. Let's talk about what truly happens when you stop being overly nice to the wrong people. You gain self-respect. When you're caught in the cycle of people-pleasing, you're not just putting others first, you're putting yourself last. You quiet your voice so theirs can be louder. You shrink your needs so theirs seem more important. You say yes when every part of you is screaming no, just to avoid conflict. But here's the deeper cost. Every time you do that, every time you abandon what matters to you for the sake of keeping the peace, your sense of self-worth quietly erodes. You may not see it at first, but over time, it builds. The resentment, the exhaustion, the silent question, when do I get to matter? Here's the truth. Choosing inner peace over constant people-pleasing is how self-worth is rebuilt. Because peace isn't just the absence of conflict, it's the protection of your emotional space. It's saying, my well-being matters too. It's learning that your time, your energy, your boundaries are not up for negotiation. And something incredible happens when you stop saying yes to things that go against your values. You begin to look at yourself differently. You stop apologizing for existing. You stop questioning your limits, and slowly you begin to act like someone who truly matters. This is where Stoic philosophy strengthens your foundation. Epictetus once said, "Respect yourself enough to walk away from anything that no longer serves you." That means walking away from people who only take, from conversations that leave you drained, from situations that demand you stay small to keep others comfortable. Self-respect isn't arrogance, it's alignment. It's knowing who you are and refusing to abandon yourself for anyone. Let me share a story with you. His name is Ethan. Ethan was always the dependable one, the problem solver, the guy who said, "Don't worry, I've got it," even when it meant sacrificing his own priorities, his peace, or his rest. But one day, Ethan paused and asked himself a hard question. Who's showing up for me the way I show up for them? The answer? Not many. So he started making changes. He politely said no. He stopped over-explaining every decision. He began creating space for his own needs. Of course, some people got uncomfortable. Some even called him selfish. But Ethan didn't waver because something inside him shifted. He started walking taller, thinking clearer, and for the first time he felt grounded, not because others approved, but because he approved of himself. So how do you build this kind of self-respect? Start here. Stop apologizing for having needs. You are allowed to take up space, make decisions that honor your values, not other people's comfort. Celebrate your growth, even when others won't. Your progress doesn't need their permission. The end of the day, when you stop being nice to the wrong people, you don't just find peace. You begin a deeper relationship with yourself. You stop shrinking to fit into others' comfort zones. You stop settling for less than you deserve. And most importantly, you start standing in that quiet, steady place. Self-respect is born, strong, silent, and unshakable. But there's one more shift, and it might be the hardest of all. It's not just emotional, it's a wake-up call. Previously, we talked about standing tall in your self-respect, finally choosing yourself after years of putting others first. But once you do that, something predictable yet unsettling tends to happen. They try to pull you back in. Let's talk about what really unfolds when you stop being overly nice to the wrong people, especially those who were quietly thriving on your compliance. These individuals weren't just enjoying your kindness, they were depending on your silence, your availability, your willingness to always bend. And when you stop, they don't just disappear gracefully, they push back, because manipulators follow patterns. When they feel your distance, they don't reflect, they strategize. At first, they might try to guilt trip you. You've changed. I guess you don't care about me anymore. Suddenly, you're the bad guy for creating a healthy boundary. They'll act like victims, twisting your growth into betrayal. They'll try to convince you that your self-respect is selfish. Other times, they put on a show. They'll become warm, charming, even apologetic. I've been thinking about things. I just want things to go back to the way they were. But if you look closely, nothing's changed. Same patterns, same control. It's not personal growth, it's tactical manipulation. They're not sorry they crossed your boundaries. They're sorry they lost access to the version of you who didn't have them. Here's the uncomfortable truth. When you create space, you reveal intent. People who truly care about you will respect your decision. People who only benefited from your self-abandonment, they'll panic. Not because they miss you, but because they miss control. Your boundaries threaten the role they played in your life. And rather than taking responsibility for their behavior, they'll try to shift the blame. They'll make you question yourself. They'll make you wonder if you were too harsh, if you misunderstood, if you're overreacting. This is where Stoic wisdom becomes a shield. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The closer one is to truth, the more falsehood resists." Think about that. The more aligned you become with your truth, when you say no without guilt, when you stop over-explaining, when you finally honor your inner peace, those rooted in falsehood won't applaud your growth. They'll resist it, not because you're wrong, but because your clarity shatters their illusion of control. Let me share a story. Her name is Rachel. For years, Rachel had a friend who leaned on her constantly, always seeking emotional support, always asking for favors. But when Rachel needed help, that friend was nowhere to be found. Still, Rachel stayed silent. She didn't want to create drama. Until one day, something changed. She decided to speak up, not harshly, but honestly. She began stepping back, and the response? predictable. First came the guilt. I guess our friendship doesn't mean anything to you anymore. Then came the charm. I miss us. Let's hang out, just like old times. But Rachel had seen the pattern too clearly. None of it was real. It wasn't about connection. It was about maintaining the dynamic that served them, not her. So she held her boundary, and that single decision changed everything. So, what do you do when someone tries to manipulate you back into the old version of yourself? First, stay grounded. Their reaction doesn't reflect your value. It reflects how much they depended on your compliance. Second, don't over-explain. The more you try to justify yourself, the more you give them ammunition to twist your words. And finally, trust the discomfort. Their resistance is proof that your boundary is working. Let it be uncomfortable. That discomfort, it's growth. At the end of the day, when you stop being overly nice to the wrong people, they will resist. But their panic will never outlast your clarity, because the power they once had was never real. It was borrowed from your willingness to stay small. Once you stop letting manipulators define your role, something incredible begins to happen. You start writing your own, and with that shift comes something unexpected, yet beautiful. You create space for genuine people. Let's talk about one of the most rewarding, yet often overlooked outcomes of ending the cycle of being overly nice to the wrong people. You begin clearing room in your life for connections that are real. At first, this journey can feel a little lonely. Pulling away from unhealthy dynamics often comes with a quiet ache. You may find yourself wondering, did I make a mistake? What if I end up alone? But here's what truly happens beneath that discomfort. As you release the people who were only there for convenience, attention, or control, you open the door to those who were meant to stay for the right reasons. By letting go of toxic ties, you create room for relationships rooted in respect, not utility. When you stop saying yes to people who only contact you when they need something, when you stop bending over backwards for those who disappear when you need help, that's when the real ones become visible. They're the people who check in without needing anything, who listen without turning every conversation back to themselves, who respect your no without demanding an explanation. These people may not be loud, they may not come in crowds, but when they do show up, they bring peace, not pressure. And that's everything. This is where Stoic wisdom again lights the path. Seneca once said, "Associate with those who make you better, not those who drain you, not those who keep score, but those who walk beside you, not behind, not ahead, with you." These are the people who elevate your character, who encourage your growth, and who value you for who you are, not for what you provide. Let me share a story. There's a guy I know, we'll call him Brandon. For years, Brandon surrounded himself with people who only showed up when it was convenient. He'd go out of his way for them, driving across town, helping them move, even lending money without hesitation. But then Brandon hit a rough patch. And those same people, they vanished. No calls, no support, no presence. That's when Brandon made a quiet choice. He didn't confront anyone. He didn't cause drama. He simply stepped back. And as the noise faded, something surprising happened. New people began to enter his life. People who were consistent. People who asked how he was doing, not what he could do for them. Over time, Brandon built a smaller circle, but it was stronger, real. rooted, steady. So, how do you make space for genuine people? First, be willing to let go. If someone constantly drains your energy, you don't owe them a permanent place in your life. Second, get clear on your values. When you know what you stand for, you'll naturally begin to recognize who stands with you. And finally, trust the process. Authentic people don't always show up right away, but they will come when there's space for them to enter. Because at the end of the day, when you stop being overly nice to the wrong people, you don't just remove noise, you open the path. And that path, it's where the right people finally find you. In the last part, we explored how letting go of the wrong people creates space for the right ones. And when those genuine relationships begin to form, something deep inside you starts to shift, quietly, powerfully, and undeniably. Your energy transforms. Let's talk about one of the most profound changes that happens when you stop being overly nice to the wrong people. You don't always see it immediately, but when it begins, you feel it everywhere. Your energy shifts when you spend all your time, emotional strength, and mental space on people who only take, those who ignore your boundaries, twist your kindness, or vanish when you need something. You begin to drain from the inside out. You feel tired for no clear reason. You lose excitement for the things that used to light you up. You become tangled in other people's needs. And slowly, you forget your own. And this is exactly why this shift is so critical. Because the moment you stop pouring into the wrong people, you start reclaiming the things that were always yours. Your time, your energy, your peace. This inner transformation doesn't just affect your relationships, it ripples into every corner of your life. You begin thinking more clearly. You find yourself focusing again. You wake up feeling lighter because that invisible emotional weight you used to carry, it's finally gone. But maybe most importantly, you begin choosing yourself. Not from a place of ego, but from necessity. This is where Stoic wisdom grounds you. Epictetus once said, "He who is not a slave to others' expectations is truly free." That's what this shift is really about. Freedom. The freedom to say no without guilt. The freedom to live without performing. The freedom to protect your peace without asking for permission. When you stop living for the approval of others, your energy stops leaking into the cracks of external validation. Instead, it begins to fuel what actually matters, your passions, your purpose, your peace. Let me tell you about someone. Her name is Jenna. Jenna was the person who always said yes. Extra shifts at work, last-minute favors for friends, hosting gatherings, even when she was already stretched thin. On the outside, she seemed dependable, reliable, strong. But inside, she was exhausted, anxious, burned out. One day, Jenna decided to pause. She didn't stop caring about others. She just started caring about herself too. She began saying no, not with anger, but with quiet confidence. She stepped away from people who only reached out when they needed something, and slowly, her energy returned. She started exercising again, picked up hobbies she'd long forgotten, smiled without faking it. She wasn't just surviving anymore, she was alive again. So if you've ever wondered what happens when you stop being overly nice to the wrong people, here it is. You gain clarity, you reclaim power, you restore your peace, you rise with self-respect, you make space for the right people, and your energy begins to bloom in the direction of your own growth. Because the truth is this: When you stop living for everyone else, you finally start living for yourself. If this message resonated with you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it. Leave a comment. Let's talk. And if you're on your own journey of choosing peace over people-pleasing, keep going. You're not selfish. You're becoming whole.